welcome all the panelists and the visitors of this session and the conference Step into a Better World, a Call to Action. And I would also, of course, like to thank you, the ONResearch and Impact 17, for hosting this event and for giving me the opportunity to moderate this discussion on smart cities as part of the topic on sustainable society. For many governments and countries, the new technologies were primarily just the tool to improve the efficiency, whether it was installing sensors and get a more accurate result, or it was an automation of infrastructural systems for cutting costs. But now the technology is really being implemented in people's lives. It's not just only about how the infrastructure and government works, and how do we really leverage the technological development and make a sustainable living is a challenge nowadays. I would like to discuss during this session how do we design the smart cities, interconnected and sustainable habitats. I have outstanding speakers during the session, and I would like to now introduce them to you. We have Illia Gorodishchanov, who is a chief specialist of the Digital Infrastructure Department at the Ukrainian Ministry of Digital Transformation, joining us from Ukraine. If you could give us just a hi so we all know who you are. He's responsible for legislative work on telecommunication and represents the ministry as the legal counselor to parliamentary working groups. Then we have Silvia Dusa. Give us a hi. We already know that she is joining us from Germany. You're Germany-based, and she is an employee experience expert and also a diversity and inclusion coordinator at Bosch Power Tools. Thank you for joining us. Silvia is currently a PhD candidate writing about specifically smart cities, so it would be really great to have your input on this theoretical base of the smart cities. Then we have Daiyoung Jung. Hello, thank you for joining us, who is a smart development consultant and executive director for the DELI-i, who's joining us from South Korea. Thank you for this. And we have Mr. Jung here, as he's been in charge of smart cities projects and the marketing of those projects, with collaborating with other countries, trying to partner and export the technologies to other governments as well. And last but not least, Marten Kaevats, joining from Estonia. We already saw the beautiful view. National Digital Advisor for the Government Office of Estonia, joining from Estonia. And I know you can be unofficially called Chief Innovation Officer, as you are responsible for adoption of new technologies into the government. Thank you all for being here with us. And the moderator of the session is I, Margaryta Pugach. I'm joining from Geneva in Switzerland, and I am the Research and Design Associate at ONResearch, which is the research arm of EU Business School. And I would like to point out for all the guests that you can join the session and jump in with the question. You can use the chat box on the right, and we will try to answer your question during our discussion as well. I would really like to make this session valuable by providing concrete examples of your work and the setting an agenda for the future. Anyone who would like to go this way of developing the smart cities, and it would be great to know your concrete examples from your experience. So we would, of course, begin by establishing the fundamental understanding of what a smart city is, and then we will proceed with the discussing on some of the crucial and modern questions on this topic, and we'll close the session by really creating the call to action, where I would like to ask each of you to give a few words on how do you want every visitor of this session to act in the future, if they're, of course, interested in the modern smart city. And now let's begin diving into the terminology. Silvia, I would like to start with you. And if you could please share what is the smart city for you and add some experience of your professional career on how did you help creating the cities. And I know I will be sharing the slides for you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Margaryta, for the nice introduction and for inviting here. So I don't really want to go in really theoretical, academical details. I would just want to tell you some stories and my personal opinion based on also theory, but also what I've seen in practice when I was visiting Mr. Jung in Busan, and also some things from my city from Romania. It was I'm from a city. They say it's the place where the future was born. So also very good branding, I think, for the city. But they named it the first smart city of Romania. However, before we get there, I would really like to tell you some stories we discovered 2 years ago in Busan, but they are still relevant also today. Oh, great. Yeah. So what is a smart city? And I think now, Illia, can you please go to the next slide? So we go directly into the story. When Margaryta asked me, just start with the smart city, I was really curious to see in Google, if you write smart city, how many results you get. And you can see here we have almost so many results. And then I wanted to be more specific. And I was searching smart city definition and in English, because otherwise I would get a lot of German answers. And we had almost 400,000, so less, but still a lot. And I want to be frank with you. Also, in the literature, there are plenty of definitions. So countries, companies, NGOs, universities researchers have their own understanding of smart cities, but there is no common agreement. And in 2018, because I was really searching to see what come closer to probably my own definition for my research for the smart city. So I used the chance in a smart city event organized by Mr. Jung here with us in Busan, where we had 87 young talents carefully selected from all around the world. They were all young innovators who want to make an impact in their community, and majority of them had their own smart city solution, or they were working in a company who was providing smart city solution. And we asked them, what is a smart city for you? And I will show you here, the most common answer was a city that uses technology to make the life better for other people. And it was really great to hear that, because also we sometimes in the literature and also in the practice, we see people developing different kinds of technologies that don't solve any issues or problems in the society. So we think, and also based on the research, technology is just a means to an end. It's not the end. And one other interesting aspect that we've seen there was that none of these people refer to learning or education in any way when asked also what is a smart city or what activities do you do to promote a smart city. And why I'm mentioning that is because even if you implement this technology in cities and you try to let's say, solve a problem with the technology in that city. If you don't have people that can monitor and use the technology and take actions based on the data the technology gives, then it's not sustainable. It's just another technology that nobody knows to use. So it's really important that cities invest in this kind of education, so to make it sustainable. And on the next slide, I want actually to present you like two extremes of the answers of the people. As I told you, we were people from around 50 countries, and also from developed and developing countries. And from the developing countries, we actually identified that a smart city for those people was something like having access to clean water. So a lot of them had this problem. They didn't have access to clean water. Some even had solutions to solve this problem for their community. And it could happen in Asia or in Africa. So it's like literally something simple like that before we talk about more developed technology. And this didn't happen only in 2018. Actually, the water problem came again in 2019 also. So it's really something that people suffer from around the world. And I think what they can do probably is to really work together. You were talking also before about partnerships, because in some location they really found solutions to this problem, so they can just replicate and adapt their solution to different countries, so they don't have to always start from scratch. So this is what we identify mainly in developing countries. I want to show you what actually we identified. For example, what is a smart city for our Korean members present there. I don't want to go much into details. I really want to present you these two extremes. But people in Korea didn't think about the water. So in Busan, it's quite a good city, very good quality of life. However, people use their technology almost for everything. Like they don't have normal keys. You enter the apartment with the code. The lamps on the street talk to you. The houses can talk to you. Even the toilet is smart. I will show you in a moment. But the people in the room, they said, in a smart city, I want to be able to replicate myself, to become my best friend. A lot of people, especially people you see, they have this water problem. When they were hearing, hey, replicate yourself, why do you want to be your own friend? So for me, even like it was only 2 years ago, I also couldn't understand that much, but it was a need that the person there had. And now for this presentation, there are actually apps now that allow you to do that. So somehow the technology, because these are real apps that you see here in the photos. So literally, it depends where you are from and what problems are there and what are the needs of the people. So a smart city, in my opinion, could really be open to listen to the needs of the people and make efforts to offer them a good life. And then can you we please go next? So I was speaking also about toilets. So if you have ever been to Korea or to Japan, I don't know if you've been, but if you go, you will see at the bathroom, you will see this toilet. Like everybody, when we went, we're talking about these toilets. And they are like smart toilets. So smart toilets in a smart city. And at the same time, also at the same event, there was someone in the room coming from Kenya. And if you take a look on the other side of the problem, they said, hey, in Kenya, in Nairobi, we also have smart toilets. Because, in our country, if you are a woman or a kid, you don't drink water after 5. We have this issue because if you drink water and you have to go out, then then you risk to get assaulted. So then people prefer not to, like, to minimize the risk to go out. And then some startups went there, and actually they did like a partnership with the government, and they created these smart toilets which are closer to the people's home. They can actually be used even inside, some of them. And what's interesting for them is that they can transform the waste into fertilizer and electricity. So that's also another example of doing something smart, but based on the needs of the people there. So why I showed you these examples is that I wanted to emphasize that being smart, it's also depending on the place you are, and of the needs of the people, of the citizens there. And then we should use technology to solve that problems as best as possible. And here I also wanted to show you something like a theoretical, and I really like this definition from International Telecommunication Union. They did a very in-depth analysis of several definitions, and they also attach the word sustainable to smart. So I think it's not enough to be smart, but you also have to be sustainable and use these technologies to meet the present needs of the people, but also the future needs of our generation. And on short, maybe if you go to the next slide, please, Illia. Thank you very much. In short, my opinion is that the smart city is a city that can talk to its citizens. Because if a city is able to talk to the citizen, to listen to their needs, it will be more chances for that city to take action. And yeah, I'm really curious what is a smart city now in times of Corona, but for that we need a further research. And please, the people who are listening to us, take the time and write in the chat. Yeah, it's good. The next slide. What is a smart city for you? Thank you very much, and I'm looking forward for the discussion.
Thank you, Silvia, for your contribution. We all now know what the smart cities are, and I think we could somehow summarize this into saying that smart cities is about using the technology into helping the society, but then it of course depends what kind of technology the society needs in which country, depending on its development. And now the next question I would like to address to Illia. As we know that the role of the government has been argued depending on different classes of societies. And I would like to talk about the role of the government in the scope of technology adoption and building smart cities. So in your opinion, what should be the role of the government, of the private sector, and of the citizens as well into adapting smart cities?
Hello, colleagues. I will share my slideshow with you. Can you see it right now?
Yes, it works with you. Thank you for helping us out.
Okay, so the government, private sector, and citizens in smart city development. How all these stakeholders and the state may work together on this achievement to make a working smart city concept. Sorry. Okay, so first of all, decision-making principles in Ukraine. The policy-making authority should act as a coordinating platform for all groups of stakeholders. It means that what goods that state authority may connect different groups of NGOs, private business, put them on one table, and we can talk and find the solutions. For instance, the strategy on smart cities development, and no decision making from above. It means that we need to take into account all opinions from local governments, associations of towns and cities, business and civil society. Because very often when some state authorities, they develop some strategies or new legislation, we see that small groups cannot be represented during such negotiations, that big companies, they don't listen to the positions of NGOs, of other small groups. Evidence-based approach in this issue is a cornerstone necessity, that all the decisions of state authorities, they should be based on good data, which should be analyzed, and only after that we may develop some strategies and make good governing decisions. And so during this process, we should implement the best world practices. Now, the smart city strategy in Ukraine. The concept of smart city development strategy in Ukraine is being developed right now. And first of all, we would like to find the definition of current issues based on reliable data. We will find after that the objectives and terms of accomplishment, because when you don't have a clear milestones and timetable of the accomplishment, you will not be able to achieve goals which you mentioned previously in your strategy, and also the methods of implementation. This year we conducted complex surveys for city councils all over Ukraine, and we asked them about the obstacles for smart city solutions implementations, which were, and here we see the responses which were addressed. First of all, no single smart city strategy, technical and policy standards. It means that even if in some cities we have already some smart city strategy, however, they're not unified, and for instance, small cities, they don't have enough resources for the development of such strategies and unified solutions. Also, the absence of clear interaction between local authorities and central executive bodies on smart city concept. It means that when we develop the strategy or telling someone to implement smart city tools, we should understand that the communication with local authorities is a key issue in this process, because otherwise you will not be able to explain them how to implement these tools. Also, the lack of financial resources for the development and maintenance of hardware and software tools of smart city. Basically, it means that when you live in a small village or small town, you don't have enough money in budget to develop and maintain some software or hardware tools. And it means that state authorities, central executive bodies, they should develop the solutions which small cities and towns will be able to use without spending a lot of money from the budget. And also no responsible people and staff. It means that when you implement something, you should assign an officer who will be in charge of the implementation process, because otherwise you will not be able to check whether the tools were implemented correctly. What we already have in Ukraine, separate smart city strategies and projects in Ukrainian cities, such as Kyiv, Kharkiv, Lviv, Poltava, and Dnipro. These are major Ukrainian cities. Some small towns also have smart city solutions, but they're quite small, and it's more like components of smart city. Also, bilateral agreements between cities and large private enterprises, NGOs, and technical support projects. It means that sometimes if local authorities want to develop some elements of smart city or some tools, they cooperate with private enterprises or technical support projects financed usually by the EU or the United States. And also we have some working elements of smart city in some cities, like e-tickets, free Wi-Fi zones, smart street lighting, air and water quality sensor, waste management solutions, smart security surveillance, and traffic management. Next steps, what we suggest to do. First of all, it's the communication with foreign partners on best practices, experience sharing on the intergovernmental level. I'm in charge of the communication with other governments on the experience sharing on telecommunications and also smart city technologies. And we're trying to implement and learn the best practices in the world. And this is a good thing because in this case, we may avoid some mistakes which other governments already had in their experience. Also, the necessity to use existing investment and support models, because of course we understand that usually there are no money for such projects in local budgets, and we should use all the tools which are provided by international organizations and support models which they provide. And the final thing is that further multi-level dialogue between all groups of stakeholders and the state, that all voices must be heard. I started from this point of view that all the NGOs, all groups of citizens, they should be represented in such working groups on smart city strategy, because we, in case we collect all the ideas and all the opinions, we will have the better strategy and better solutions for everyone. Thank you for your attention. That's all from my side.
Thank you. It was great to hear it from the perspective of a Ukrainian government. Now, Marten, I would really love to hear your views on the role of the government and how is it done in Estonia.
So, hello again, everybody. I hope you can hear me. So there is quite a lot of talk about the definition and practice, and I would mainly focus currently that I'm also an architect and city planner by background, currently responsible for all of the digital stuff, and basically working on smart city is one of my core issues in terms of education and my current work as well. But in terms of the definitions and everything, like, we need to enjoy this process. We need to make this a dynamic one, and it's about actually making life easier for the people themselves. And Ukraine is a superb example of also, like Illia was mentioning, checking out best practices and so on. There is a lot of cool stuff happening already. But from the Estonian governmental point of view, basically the government's role is to create this kind of a safe room where everybody can be themselves and be open and not necessarily highly bureaucratic and full of this very bureaucratic bullshit bingo words. We need to actually create an environment where everybody feels safe, and then innovation can happen. And then in terms of the smart city deployment and stuff, there is some important necessary steps to make those things happening. But the main lesson learned is that creating this environment has got nothing to do with technology. It's mainly, and the problem and the focus is on the mindset and culture of people. And especially starting with, for example, in the context of smart city, it's the policies from the government, and it's the policies from the municipality. And the very good example from the smart city domain is EMD. Last year, I think, pre-pandemic time, launched their smart city index, which mainly focuses on something like Silvia said already in the very beginning, that it's not about the amount of sensors you have per square kilometer. It's about how do you actually make the people's lives better, and making them better. We look, I think, need to look at that we need to automate a lot of bureaucracy, because although government and machinery is very keen on controlling people and then filling out the tick boxes in every location, then we actually need to help people to live their lives. Government needs to provide the framework so that people can be creative, entrepreneurial, can help to do, and government is here to help rather than to punish people. And I think also in terms of terminology, there is a lot of mix-up. I'm pretty sure, and as much as I've been to Korea and Japan, and as much as I've been to Ukraine or other places, then everybody has a very different understanding of what smart city is. Like the Japanese think that, or they utilize, it's a rebrand for e-governance. So all of these things are kind of mixed up. But if we are actually talking about city environment, then me as an architect and city planner, it's about how this stuff actually makes my life easier so that I don't have to do stupid stuff. I don't want to do bureaucratic form filling or everything. In Estonia, we are basically automating all kinds of routine bureaucracy within the next 10 years, which means that governments and municipalities are here to help people rather than to punish them. And this also goes to the security and privacy concerns, because it's not about building a big brother type of a control machinery. It's rather building an enabling and trustworthy environment where innovation can thrive. So in a nutshell, but there's quite a lot more to explain. Thank you.
Thank you. That is a different overview of how you help and advise the governments in the smart cities. Thank you for this. And now you have mentioned Smart City Index, and there is another term which is sustainable city. So this following question I would like to address to you, Mr. Jung. What are your opinions on the best practices of smart cities and sustainable cities? Is there a crucial difference, or we're talking about the same thing but in different words?
I think the smart city and the sustainable city are very similar concept, but people tend to use this city in a different situation. People, when the people transform the city in a city with the technology-focused way, they use a smart city. But in an eco-friendly way, sustainable city.
Okay, so you think that you can call the same city smart city and sustainable city, but depending on the comments you would like to then follow. Okay. Yeah. Illia, would you agree with this statement?
Well, I would say yes, because actually, for instance, about our strategy, when we started to develop this, at first it was smart city, but now we see that it's more like digital solutions for local governments. So it's not something fixed or that something just stable, because it's a very dynamic thing. Digitalization, and as my colleague from Estonia already said, we're also working on the digitalization of administrative services in Ukraine, because our government wants to move everything into the digital dimension, so you don't have to go to different administrative buildings and speak with civil servants. You just use your smartphone or your laptop, and you take all the necessary administrative services online without interacting with bureaucratic machine. So it's like, basically, it's a bureaucracy hacking process.
Okay. And Silvia, developing on the thought that probably smart cities and sustainable cities are more or less similar thing, while working on your projects, what do you put first? Is it planet or people? Because even though the result might be similar in the end of developing the city, but the goal of developing is in order to live sustainably, to sustain the environment, meaning the planet, or sustainably helping the people. So what do you put first, society or the planet?
Yeah, probably I would put the problem. It's also with P, but it's not people or planet. I think the problem that you have in that should be considered, and then you design a solution for that. And when you design the solution, you have to make it sustainable. And a lot about this environmental friendly, but for me sustainable also means that, you know, it's also a solution gives benefits on the long run, because I saw also in Illia's presentation that the problem now they have is that, you know, people don't know how to use the technology in the smart city. So yeah, then it will not be, those solutions will not be sustainable there, because who will operate? So to make my answer short, I think first we should really focus on what problems are we trying to solve, how can we make the life better of these people, and we should do it in a way that doesn't harm our planet.
Thank you for this input. And the next discussion I would like to turn into more an ethical. Marten, you work closely with e-government. What are your comments on having all the technologies, especially artificial intelligence, being implemented more and more, and whether we have to make the technology more human, and how do people react on this?
So basically, I started the Estonian AI policy law and implementations, and currently we have about 45 different narrow AI applications up and running in the public sector here in Estonia. And we are coming out with a legal bill to actually define algorithmic liability next year. So all of this work was initiated by me 3 years ago. I would a bit try to rephrase the question. You cannot make AI more human-like. That's a very common error. One of the problems of AI is this vision that everybody gets the Terminator kind of a red eye and wants to kill everybody. No, it's not about those things. AI will never be human. It's a different thing. It's a tool. But in terms of ethical sides, one of the main things that I would like to point out is that basically, the problem with civil servants, whether they work for the government or municipalities, is that they tend to have no competence at all about digital solutions, and they not necessarily are the innovators of the world. Then the civil servants tend to be trigger happy and want to make centralized databases, because then, wow, magically all of their problems will somehow be solved. It won't. And that's one of the problems that Estonia has been pioneering, that thou shalt not build centralized architecture, thou shalt not build monolithic architecture, build a distributed architecture. And again, Ukraine with Trembita, with its data exchange layer is a very good example, how a government tries to reinvent itself. We are having a coherent governance architecture to these technological issues. And yet again, I point out that although governments, municipalities, and civil servants tend to make a long list of documents where a lot of strange and complicated words have been described, then I would still argue that 98% of all governments in the world and municipalities lack any sort of an actual coherent plan on digitalization or smart city, or however we call it. Korea is definitely a positive example. Singapore, of course, China has a plan as well. But the problem is that these types of documents are being generated, but they lack any sort of a coherent, holistic integrity. The different Lego bits are being made, and the services might be even good ones, much better than in either Busan or Ukraine or Estonia. It doesn't matter, but the bits and pieces do not go together. And in terms of going down to the nitty-grittiness of ethics, then this is a legal issue. We need legal, but also a cultural issue. So we need to build for transparency in these systems. We need to build different mechanisms that can facilitate and have this transparency. But we need to also acknowledge that this is actually a cultural change. And when we're explaining something complex such as artificial intelligence, everybody gets the Terminator vision in their hand, which is not true. Then kind of explaining that is really difficult to a general society. In Estonia, we have made a workaround and a hack, which means that in Estonia, we call it kratt. Kratt is a mythological creature in Estonian folklore, which basically resembles an AI. But the difference is that I, for example, have 3 children in my family. None of them know what an AI is, but everybody knows what a kratt is in Estonian folklore. So we as a government use these mythological metaphors in order to make it more easily understandable for the general society, and also to kind of try to diminish this vision of Terminator. Because yes, although acknowledging the potential threats of existential risk, which we won't be going into now, then it's not about that. It's actually about solving problems. And currently, while having 45 different narrow AI applications deployed in the public sector, and we have spent about 2 million euros in order to deploy them, the quality of the services and the cost effectiveness we can already show in a bloody Excel sheet is good. But moreover, we need to build a community of civil servants and people who actually are open to these kind of new solutions, because one of the problems of AI is actually that, like previously in the industrial age, it was like if and then, cause and effect, and all of our mind has been pre-programmed in this kind of a linear way. But with AI, it's not like that. It's like 80% you get the novel and 20% you get the haiku. It's kind of chance. So it's not a linear process. In order to build the culture for adapting those things, we need to have the transparency mechanisms for the ethical part, but we also need to build for the culture of the non-linear. And this is a much complicated thing that we can go and describe in detail later on, maybe. Thank you.
Good. So we can summarize that we cannot make the technology more human, and we don't have to. What we have to do is to make sure that everyone understands what the technology is and integrate it in our lives, as not as your best friend, as we were discussing probably, but as a tool to help you live better. Thank you for your input. The next question I would like to briefly address to Mr. Jung. It is, of course, evident that we need to facilitate partnerships and sharing the expertise from country to country is an important thing in order to build a better, sustainable and smart cities. Your experiences on how did you market your projects of smart cities in Busan with other countries?
Yes. Based on my experience, partnership should be encouraged when you do the smart city business. Smart city is not proven much yet. Already the Illia and Marten already explained much about their country and their city. So nobody knows exactly what the smart city is. So also every city has in a different situation, but many information communication technology already penetrated our life. Whether we want it or not, smart city happen on our planet. Also, maybe it's gonna happen in your city soon. So we need to share our knowledge and experience. This could help each other very much. Also save our time, energy, many things we can save. But another city copy the other city's experience, knowledge. They cannot copy completely same because every city in a different situation. So they need to adjust a little bit, and then maybe they replicate and scale up. And that's my basic thought. And then I will tell you my real experience. Mostly my real experience is with the South Asian countries such as Thailand and Malaysia. Also, especially in 2017 and 18, I had a smart city business with the Thailand city, Phuket and Bangkok. Relevant stakeholder like the Bangkok, the government office and the private company in the Bangkok city and the Phuket city, they want to build a smart city. They want to create a smart city, but they don't want to spend the money first. They want somebody to bring a lot of money and then make a smart city or sustainable city in their city of them. And then they want the investor bring their money back in a long term. So our project didn't go well smoothly because of money issue. So in Southeastern Asian country, maybe some problem, government problem. Yeah, that's my experience.
Thank you, Mr. Jung. I think we can make the whole new session discussing the financial issues of everything we have. And just to finalize the session, I would like to address the last question to each of the panelists, starting with you, Mr. Jung. Since this whole conference is an impact-oriented event, just in 30 seconds, what is your call to action?
Okay. We already know that our plan is dying slowly, very slowly. And then we have failed to find another planet to replace our planet. So we need to make our city smarter, livable, and sustainable.
Perfect. Thank you.
So that's why we are creating the smarter city and the sustainable city all of the world. So
thank you.
I hope we will have a very good and exciting, and then I am looking forward one of smarter city. I'm looking forward to living in one of.
Let's hope for this. Silvia, the floor is yours. What is your call to action in 30 seconds?
I will just use 30 seconds. So I think it's also about the individual. I would like to invite the people who are in this session to really think what they can do as an individual level to make their community or their city smarter. Because also with little actions, as Martin said, it's also about the culture and the mindset. With little actions that an individual, that us, we can do, things can change and the life can get better. So think about what you can do.
Thank you. Illia, please, what is your call to action?
Well, I would suggest that you should find partners in your ideas of implementation of your ideas with in different areas. You should find partners in a civil service, in NGOs. When you find people who share your opinions, your vision, it's easier to achieve goals which you have. So just find partners and find the goals.
Great, thank you. And let's wrap this discussion up with your opinion, Martin. What is your call to action?
So 30 seconds call to action would be dissolve your ego. It's not about you. It's about building a community between people. If you have that community, you need to build a plan. And this plan needs to be adaptable, constantly adaptable, because from a governmental point of view, we cannot or nobody can predict the future. I can tell you hours about AI and self-driving cars, but the only thing that governments can actually do in communities and businesses and everybody is to build adaptive governance architecture. So things could change faster, because all of these changes like COVID this year, these will coming and they're coming and more speed. We need to build to adapt. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let's finalize the session. I really thank you, every panelist, for joining us today. We got insights and what's important, the actionable and doable actions which we need to further do in order to achieve what we would like to achieve, whether it comes to smart cities or any projects in our lives. This panel discussion is over, and I would like all visitors to join us for the next sessions as well, which starting in 2.5 minutes on FinTech revolution. This will also be very interesting. Thank you once again, everyone, and have a great conference. Thank you.
Thank you.